Roll call, we got everybody here tonight. Additions to the agenda, I believe we have numbers 5 and 6 under business.
That's correct.
Okay. With those additions, I entertain a motion to adopt. Okay, motion by Bruce, second by Lou. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to approve the correct minutes from May 7th meeting.
So moved.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, motion by Deb.
Second.
And a second by Bruce. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Financial reports. We have the April Treasurer's Report and monthly balance sheets. Point out.
I think just on the monthly expenditure report, if you go to the second page, you'll notice a couple on the far right, a couple negative balances there, 909, and those are Carl Perkins dollars. So we do get reimbursed with them. We put in for the dollars, and then those dollars will come back. And then down at the bottom, we're overdrafted on one place, and we'll do some transfers of budgets that we have money for to make up for that. That's what.
Is there any questions for Bob or anybody else?
I'll make a motion for the monthly balance sheet.
Motion by Mark. Second by Lou. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then we've got April and May bills.
I had the opportunity this afternoon to go through the additional April bills in May, and I didn't find anything out of the norm, so I would make a recommendation to approve.
Okay, motion by Mark to approve. Second, Ellen. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we've got one item on the consent agenda. Any questions for that?
This is really according to the master contracts.
Yep.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Second
Motion by
it.
Bruce, second by Cheryl. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to business. Number one, we've got Joe Siernia from Newell, present us some recommissioning information.
Should we move around?
I would
Yeah.
think that would be a good thing. Two? I suppose it has to be two, did it without blowing up your computer,
Few of these. And as I'm going through it, I got some studies that we've done that I can just kind of pass and kind of look at them as I'm presenting here. A couple different types of buildings. Okay, I'm Joe Cernia from the Yale Company, Director of Energy Services, and I've been asked to come here, Donnie. We do a lot of controls, temperature controls in the buildings here. And talk a little bit about recommissioning. Recommissioning is kind of a process where you go in to the building, and we're not replacing air handlers and chillers and that type of big capital equipment. We're actually going in there and fine tuning the building, making small changes with littler cost to save energy. So here's kind of this kind of a brochure here. Usually we're seeing about 5 to 20%. 20% is probably our average, what we're seeing of utility cost savings from doing the study. Excel will fund the studies. They'll fund up to 75% of the study cost, capped at $25,000. So it's kind of a big deal. A way to look at it is you can get your building checked out for possibly 75% off our labor. Okay. So we got executive summary, equipment, recommissioning. We do a point-to-point verification of the controls. We compare operations with original design intent. List all the deficiencies with proposals to correct. Go ahead and do trends. We list energy conservation opportunities with savings, rebates. We do an Energy Star rating on your building. We use a program that we have online users called Utility Track. We run 2 to 3 years worth of utilities and kind of get a benchmark of how your buildings are doing. Also, we use that to measure cost avoidance from the implemented projects. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to pull up a report here. And I'm kind of picking Grace Church here. This is one that we actually got a case study on. We did this about 2 years ago. So we got a write-up from Excel. They saved about half their natural gas cost and about 22% of their electrical on this study. About $107,000 in savings. Cost of the project was about $182,000, and they got about $38,000 in rebates, which came down to a 1.5 year payback. Also, what they did is they actually did a lease on the money, and by the time they got the payments done, they got the savings back, it was pretty much already paid for. Okay, so let's go look at their study.
Can I ask you a question while you're on there?
Go ahead.
On the last one, it said that the project cost, the Excel Energy part was like $32,000, but the cost of the project was $184,000. Was the difference all the things that you did to make it work?
Yeah, so the savings, the 107 in savings, and then the rebate. Of course, they implemented and they got, so we got an executive summary here. And here's kind of our summary. So we've got a list of ECOs, stands for Energy Conservation Opportunities. And you can see we got a list of those. And we got a descriptor, we got a savings per year, cost to implement, a rebate from Excel, and payback in simple years. And you can pick and choose pretty much any ones you want to do. If you want to do all the ones under 5 years, under 2 years, that type of thing. Now, anything under 9 months, Excel doesn't give a rebate for, but they have a bonus program they came out with that if you implement within 9 months of the study presentation, they'll give an extra possible $10,000 in bonus rebates. And those include the ones that are under 9 months, because typically they figure if it's under 9 months, you shouldn't get a rebate, you should be doing it. So that would include those on the bonus program.
And this would be heat for the winter and air conditioning for the summertime. I
Yes.
saw on the last sheet you had a whole bunch for summer.
Yep.
So you had,
Yeah, it's all the
and we wouldn't be that part of it, because we only have heat.
Yeah, but you got
All over the
electrical,
building?
you got air handlers, you got fans, you got lights.
So that's air all year round, not necessarily air conditioning.
Correct. You have to have a certain amount of fresh air by code coming in the buildings for the kids. So that's the other thing too, is that those fans have to push that air in here, and they actually have to heat it up in the winter if you say you don't have cooling. You would have a little bit.
We have chillers and
Yeah.
air conditioning in the offices.
Okay. So those
Computer
areas.
labs.
Yep. Okay, so. Here's the energy profile I was talking about. We'll go ahead and put 2 to 3 years worth of utility data in here so we can benchmark your facility. You can see that we got breakdown in cost and energy. Just kind of zip through this here. And then we got pie charts, how much natural gas, how much electrical, breaks it down to square footage, that type of thing. Here's an example. You can see where the arrow is. That's when we started implementing the project, and you can see the drastic drop in utility cost after we started implementing this project. So they were saving around $10,000 a month after we started implementing this project. Here's a church that was running 100%, even though it was only maybe like 40% used during the week. So one of the big opportunities we put in there was motion sensors on all the rooms, on all the DAV boxes. And we make it a smart room so it knows when people are there, goes occupied. When people are not there, it goes ahead and sets it up or sets it back, reduces the fan speed, reduces the outside air, and goes to a standby mode. So we're able to save a lot of energy just by doing that. So one of the first things that our team will do is they'll come in and do a checklist on the mechanical equipment. So they're going to go through the equipment on my proposal and look at motors, insulation, dampers, more mechanical type stuff with the equipment. They're looking for deficiencies. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a functional testing of the equipment. So we're going to go ahead and test calibration of the sensors, pressures, stroke dampers open and close, stroke valves open and close. We're looking for deficiencies, issues. And we're going to log all that. Also, our ECO discovery team is going to come in. We're going to look to see how the equipment is sequenced. Here's how it's operating now, so we can make it better. So we'll come in, log how it's operating now, and then come up with new strategies to save energy. With that said, so everything from the mechanical checklist, the functional testing, the sequence of operation, and energy conservation opportunities discoveries goes into this one report. This one report is going to have some items. It's got an item number, air handler, reference, photo, and a description of what the strategy is. You can see some have an ECO, energy conservation opportunity, They're numbered 1, 2, 3. Those are the ones you seen on that summary page I showed you earlier. And those are the ones that have rebates tied to them, cost to implement, savings, and payback years. The other ones are just failures, heating duct coils, type things that either are hard to measure or don't bring in a lot of savings, but they should be something that should be done by the maintenance team. And typically, they can either do that themselves, most of it probably, or hire out, or get some pricing on that. If we were to do all of them, I mean, we usually find several hundred items on a list here, so. And then we have reference photos of all the failures and problems. So that brings us down to the Excel tool. Okay, Excel tool was developed by Excel, had some third-party engineers develop this tool. And what we do is we populate it with schedules, horsepower, CFM, amperages, and the strategies. And then it goes ahead and it spits out savings in a gas, electric, rebates, the whole thing. So it's just not us telling you, well, here's what we calculated for savings. Excel is in the game too, and they got to prove what we were coming up with. So it's kind of a team between Excel and us.
So does Excel come in too, or that they're just using what you're getting, that information?
Yeah, so when we get done with the report, we have to send it to them, their engineers, look at it,
Okay.
give it the blessing, and then we can present it to you.
Okay, so they don't come in the building either?
They don't.
Okay, okay,
We're doing all the legwork and
Okay.
using their tool.
okay.
So here's a list of all the energy strategies. It's got demand, it's got gas, electric savings, the whole thing on it. So that's kind of what it's about, the report. It's kind of a good thing if you don't want to spend a lot of money and replace things and you just want to fix the equipment that you have now and make it better, make it more efficient.
If you do this, and we have two buildings, is it twice the cost, or is it just one cost for both buildings?
Do you mind if I show the pricing?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got, I have a price for the elementary and a price for the high school, middle school. So right here, it's all the information we just talked about in the report. And this one here is the elementary for $12,700. Now, I don't know what Excel's gonna kick in. They could kick in 75% of that. The next step would be to go ahead and get pre-approved and submit some paperwork to Excel. And then they would come back with a letter saying that they're going to pay 75%, 50% of the study cost.
So we would know that before we're committed to anything?
Yes. So, and another thing it's good for is they'll actually go ahead and benchmark your building. So they'll take your utility bills and their engineers will say, okay, is this an energy hog building? What kind of energy could they possibly save? What's the KW per square foot? So if you come back and you get a 75, they think there's a lot of energy savings here, okay? If you get 25, then that's great. Now schools aren't the best just because they're not open year-round, they're closed down for a couple months. So typically what we're seeing is about 50%, but sometimes there's different areas that might get a little more money. So that was the elementary. And this is the high school, middle school, which is at $27,300.
That's without rebates.
Without rebate. So you could get a potential another 75% on this one, funding. And then I have, the equipment listed here that we're gonna go through. And at the high school, middle school. So I've got other documents. If someone wants to look at this, they go ahead and look at the proposal. So that's kind of a brief overview of recommissioning. Does anyone have any other questions on the process or?
So this will be just for the recommissioning, and but it's not going to, we won't know what, these extra things that we would have to do to fix it.
Correct. We would have to actually do the study,
Yep.
and in the study is going to be the list
Things that we,
of, if I pull that up again for you.
Because that showed list plus possible savings, correct, and costs.
yep.
Right. Let's go. So right here, you're gonna see, these are the strategies that we came up with, the ECOs. And then we've got savings, the cost to implement. So there's your cost to implement. And then the rebate for Excel will be on there.
So you
And at that
won't-
time, you can decide, we want to do 5, we want to do 2, we want to do 0. It's up to you.
Yeah, this
After the study.
And we, so when you're in there, you're not gonna be adjusting anything or changing anything.
Sometimes if we, like, we had a school district where we got done with it, we had all these deficiencies. And he wanted to get them fixed if we could do it on the fly, or as we go, or maybe that week or the next week. He didn't want to wait till the end. Because this process might take 3 months to do before we get a presentation.
Okay.
So he went ahead and gave us just kind of an open PO, and we went ahead and fixed things as we went, and that's the way he wanted to do it, so it's up to you.
That report from Grace Church, you had a number somewhere in there about $180,000. Does that include the improvements made after the recommissioning and the recommissioning, or, I think you were kind of answering that question, but you go through this thing and you come up with a list of needs or fixes, I presume? And then you decide what to do with it.
Right.
Their number is what they actually went ahead and did? Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, they did 99% of them probably on this item right here, on this list. Which came up to about 188.
So I'm sitting here with Big Lakes
Okay.
report.
Yeah.
Where would I find that report with that total for Big Lake? The curious part,
Okay.
I think for all of us, is if we spend $40,000
Yeah.
for whatever it is, do you think we're looking at another 100, another 200, or what that number is? Because it kind of, the big number is probably as much as what we're interested in as anything. It's a loaded question.
Yeah.
But you're going to schools with the vintage bars, with ages like ours, you see what's out there, we're probably not a whole lot of different than other schools that were designed by the same people.
Yeah.
What would you
It
expect?
really kind of depends, because like Big Lake, he had a bunch of pneumatic VAV boxes. And he wanted to go ahead and include those as part of the energy strategies, so we
So
actually.
what was their total cost, do you recall? Or is it in this book here somewhere?
It was high, it was like 400,
Okay.
but they did not do them all.
So at the end of the report, would you know how efficiently the system is running in all areas?
we're going to pull up as many strategies as we can on each piece of equipment. So we're gonna look at whatever strategies we can do. Some of them, we do have the controls on, so that does help keep the cost down. When you don't have any controls and you got pneumatics, it's hard to do strategies. So sometimes we have to throw some controls on them to do the program strategies. You know, there's a lot of different ones out there that do add up to a.
But we have an idea what the airflow is in the building, all those types of things.
Airflow, we don't do a lot of balancing and that type of thing, you know, but we're gonna look at your minimum positions and fresh air requirements. We like to add a lot of frequency drives to motors. Excel, they pretty much pay for the frequency drive, plus you can come up with some strategies for the end of the day when the kids are starting to empty out, you lower the fan speed down. And there's only a few people here, so let's say you ramp it down to 50% for an hour. Well, times the whole year, that adds up to a lot of energy. Plus, maintenance of when the fan starts, it starts up slow, so you're not burning up belts and that type of thing too. So those are a few of the strategies we would use at this school. Can't tell you until we start doing the report what they are. But you're probably gonna have to add some DDC to it to get some of these strategies. This one's pretty heavy on DDC. I don't see those kind of costs for implementation on this building.
Would the next step then be to give this proposal to Excel and then they decide what they will?
Yeah, we'd have to get pre-approved, so there's an application to fill out, send it in with my proposal, and then within a week or two, you'll get a letter back from Excel saying they'll pay for it.
And then we
a
can
certain
make
amount
a
of time.
decision based on that.
Right. Here's a approval letter for Big Lake.
How recent is it?
So here, theirs is 28.6, and they paid 18.625,
Okay.
so you get that letter.
How old was that school?
2004.
You said that they did about $400,000 worth of improvements?
They did not do, they did all the deficiencies, and they're still budgeting to do some of the ECOs. So some of the energy strategies, they have not done those yet.
But you can do that over the course of, I think.
You got 3 years.
Oh, 3 years
to do
doing
it.
that, oh, okay.
So he'll start budgeting and start picking away at
Okay.
the good ones.
But if they didn't get a rebate anyway, then you would have as long as you want. So it's only the rebate that you have, the 3-year limit?
Right.
Because if it's an energy savings, but there's no rebate, then there wouldn't be a time limit on
Right.
how long you have to do it.
Right. So that'd be 3 years on the rebate. Exactly.
That makes sense.
But they do put that timeline of
Yeah.
9 months to get the $10,000 bonus, so.
Another question that I have, are you familiar with the recommendations that Hallberg made and this Johnson Controls thing that we went through at all, or?
Yeah.
What I'm having a hard time reconciling that, and I just don't understand it, the distinction here of what you guys exactly are looking at, because we went through this process with Hallberg, and they came up with like $8 million worth of recommendations that we, so
Yeah.
that's gutting the whole building.
But they're looking at replacing air handlers, the whole.
Right, so you guys are you looking at the air handlers?
We'll look at them. I can't replace it with this program. Excel will get mad at me if I do that.
Yeah, but you
So-
guys analyze?
So what I'll do is, if I see that the unit is at its end of its life cycle, I'm gonna say, here's what we can do to it to get some energy out of it, but probably gonna recommend that you replace this. And we go through another pot of money from Excel to get some rebates if you wanted to do that. But it's not replacing equipment. These are not guaranteed savings like performance contracting.
But you look at our equipment.
Yeah.
It's like another opinion.
We're gonna go through and test, like I said, the dampers, the valves, the temperatures,
Yeah.
the whole functionality of the equipment.
Every piece of equipment,
The equipment that's listed on my proposal.
Pretty much all of it.
it's everything that,
There might be some unit off, or
So the major air handlers and that type of thing, if you have a lot of little units and stuff, we might do a sample of those. Because sometimes there's hundreds of those, and if we were to check those out, it could be a big bill.
So if you recommended that an air handler needed to be replaced because it's at the end of its life cycle, there are rebates then and other things that you go through Excel, possibly
Yeah.
getting some additional
Yes.
dollars for that.
Right.
but just because it's at its end of its life doesn't mean that it's not functioning properly.
Right, I mean, it's you know, we're gonna functional test it
Yep.
and find out what's wrong with it.
Okay.
And maybe it's just a matter of fixing a damper or a
Right.
valve.
Right.
Maybe it's just fine.
But those are the things
But-
you're gonna tell.
Right,
But then
but,
you're gonna weigh out
Yeah.
what it's gonna cost to fix it and what a brand new one would cost.
right,
You give up that information.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like the boiler system, is that something that's included in?
Yeah, we would be looking at the boiler operation, doing resets and that type of thing, save energy. And again, if it's at the end of its life cycle, we can make some recommendations.
And if there's something that's not on your list that we want checked, we can talk to you about that.
Sure. But I think we have all the major equipment, so.
it's just a small, like hallway heaters and stuff, or
Heating
energy
heaters.
heaters, we don't have.
Yeah.
You know, from my perspective, I'd probably also, Hallmark has also said that they would look at any proposal just to see if there's anything else that we need to do, so we could also run it past Hallmark and say this is what they're gonna do. Is there anything else that you would recommend?
So the Hallberg gave you a price just to pretty much replace everything,
Well, they gave us a price for a certain number of projects.
Okay.
So,
which were substantial projects.
about $8 million worth of projects. Depends what you call it, substantial.
Yeah. So I guess if you have the money, then it's,
Recalibrating.
yeah.
There was another discussion in all of that where Hulbert talked about recalibrating the buildings where it came out to 40,000 a building and then their estimate was 160,000 for the whole thing eventually. I thought that was updating. Does anybody recall? It was in all of that same
Updating what?
discussion.
Recalibrate.
Hubbard was talking about an updating. There's this reanalysis, what did we call this one? And recalibrating can be defined differently, but they were talking about how they would be replacing solenoids or units and things like that, and they were talking about 160. Well, what we're seeing here is you have this, and so the church has $188,000, the school's got $400,000 to continue on from your report.
Yeah. But we're not replacing the major equipment, we're just,
And you're not, and you're gonna adjust something, but you're not gonna completely rebalance everything.
right.
That was
We're
the
more
difference.
looking for energy savings, because
Right.
that's the whole purpose of this, is to save kilowatt hours, kilowatts, electrical. Of course, we look at gas too, but we're not looking at, of course, we gotta look at comfort, because that's important. This fine line between savings and comfort and some of the codes for fresh air requirements.
Some of the big projects, I thought they were just basically gonna get it out and put all brand new stuff in.
Not on everything, not on everything.
So there were portions that there was an analysis of the existing equipment.
They assumed analysis on a lot of the things. They didn't test even Hallberg never tested every, they just
I
did
was
samples. They just did sample testing, and then they looked at the vintage of the models that we had inside, and said, you know what, at the end of the life, it's at the end of the life, so it's better for you, without messing around with it and trying to readjust something, you're gonna break something, and then all of a sudden there you have it, now you're gonna have to replace it, and if you don't have the funds to doing it, then it's gonna be how you're gonna handle those issues. So their recommendation was more on the end of life, on a lot of the equipment, for some of the stuff that
It
was
was
actually.
more in the high school, the 69.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of what they were, and that's where the money difference is where they're gonna actually come in and fix it and balance it and do everything. Where this, I'm assuming, or what I'm hearing from you is, you're gonna give us an idea of what is our equipment doing now, and if there is some improvements on that, then with Excel, we can improve some of those different things, whatever
What
those
the cost would
listed.
be and how to get it.
Yeah,
I mean,
but that is not gonna be everything.
see, big difference is, I'm gonna try to fix what you have by keeping what you have right now. By fixing it, adjusting it, calibrating it, so it operates at its peak performance of the equipment you have now. Hallberg wants to just tear it out and replace it with new, and that's a lot more money. I might put some controls on there, but that would be probably expensive. Maybe new dampers here, there, whatever.
I was under the impression, we were actually looking for a method to figure out where we're at. If we are totally out of adjustment, looking to replace in a great big project, something that doesn't need to be replaced, if you can fix it and just get it working, that was where I'm at. And I think that's what you're referring to.
That's where we're at right there.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
So I guess, if your equipment is old and you want it, and you have money to replace it, well then, maybe Hallberg's program is it, but if you don't have the money and your equipment is middle of the road and it's got some life left in it, this might be the process.
What they have is a very big question.
Do you know if there's any, what the financing mechanisms are for these projects? If you do have to go ahead and spend a few $100,000s on there, are there health and safety dollars available, or is it general fund dollars, or capital dollars, or do you not know?
I don't usually do a lot of that type of stuff. I'm sure there's funds available that we'll get to. The church, they actually just did a lease on the money, and within a year, they got all their money back.
Something to check into, see if
We
there's-
would have to look at that. I mean, I'm assuming health and safety, I know that I've heard that the health and safety dollars might be able to even do the reconditioning. But then again, then you're talking about going, if you use it, health and safety, then you're not going to the public. Right? You're just levying for it, and you have a right to levy within a certain amount. So the board would have to have some discussion about what the best way to go about that would be.
So we're at a cost, depending upon what Excel does, probably looking at a $10,000 to $20,000 number. Depending upon if they do 50% or 75% or what.
I think you'd probably around the 20 to 25,000 range from what I can see here. You know, but I mean, the nice thing is, if the board's desire is for me to do the application, that just takes some time, and we send the application in, and
It doesn't cost
it doesn't mean, it doesn't cost anything other than some time.
I think we
to
have to
send
take
that
this
in.
step by step.
And I'll fill the paperwork.
Okay, I love it when somebody fills a paper.
Hey, I'm good at it. So. We're doing a lot of them. We're actually the leading provider for us.
Okay, so
Do we need a motion to?
I would prefer to have a motion directing me to do that.
And I'll second it.
We have a motion.
Bruce, and a second from Cheryl to go ahead and make the application to Excel Energy. Do you have final costs, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Any further discussion?
If you need me or anything or down, just let us know.
There's a couple things you got to do.
Okay.
So we're not approving any monies or anything?
No.
All you are approving is paperwork at this time, that's it.
All right. Let's make sure.
You're improving our ability to do the application.
Yeah. Gonna see what the rebate is first, but we're gonna see the.
Is there any chance we would have that information back within a couple weeks? If we get this right away?
If we get it in right away, and I kind of push on it, Excel likes to move kind of slow, but if I push on it with the account manager, I think a week or two would be back.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, thank you, Joe. Moving on.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Well, just work with me or Donnie, whatever you need to try to get that done as least as quick as we can. Let me, number one and number
All right, so we're going to skip ahead to number 5, so we can hear Ken Push and the FFA proposal concerning the well.
First of all, I'd like to thank Rob for getting us on this agenda at such a short notice. I think about it.
That was one of those additions, so just keep in mind.
So, and I'm gonna have Matt give the proposal for new irrigation well. He puts this proposal together and everybody has a copy in front of them. Someplace on the table. I laid it down beside your envelope.
Good evening. Again, thank you for taking the time to listen to us and hear what we have. Just want to give you a quick update on where we're at with the plot. Right now, we were able to get the corn and soybeans planted last week, luckily before the rain came. And so we're off to a good start here, and now the rain's helping us out. If only Mother Nature would help us all week, all summer long with a couple inches a week for that particular piece of ground, we wouldn't have to be here tonight. But we need to be here because Mother Nature doesn't always help us out. So a year ago, we really seen that. With the hot weather conditions and the dry conditions that we had, we've really seen some issues and some things, or not some things that could occur in the future. The current well that's currently there, it was used excessively. And as athletic fields continue to be added, and the use of water is used, that well was really used a lot. So over the winter and stuff like that, we us as an alumni decided we wanted to bring together a possibility of adding a second well out there. And we've had a meeting with Max and Matt Dickhausen and to look at things with them. And unfortunately, they're not here tonight, but they said there may be some funds available through the Community Service Fund is our understanding. But that's our purpose and that's our reason here tonight. So as we're going through this, just keep that in mind. So we developed a mission statement, and the mission statement is for the athletic department, community education, and the FFA to cooperatively work together to improve the opportunities available to the students and the community of the Paynesville area. There's benefits to everybody that's involved with this. And the benefits are, like I said before, the longevity of the current well. And it also provides a backup of the well. Like I said, that current well was built in 1988. And as we continue to get more and more ball fields, and we ask for use on the plot of it, it's going to see continued use out of it over time. Eliminate scheduling conflicts. Max and Matt were phenomenal, and Donnie, they were phenomenal, and they've been very good to work with in the past. However, when you irrigate, whether it's ball fields or field or whatever, it's best to do it at night because you have a lower evaporation rate and it's a lot easier to do, and so you get more use of the water of it over time. We have like I said, with the expansion of athletic fields, we're gonna have increased irrigation over that time, with some different things happening. Both entities then will be allowed to irrigate at night if we're able to use off both wells. Like I said, lower evaporation rate, irrigation athletic fields will provide a safer environment for students. We want to avoid injury. That's our bottom line to students, and we want to have the safety of the students to be our number one goal and focus. And if the athletic fields are softer because they're watered more, hopefully that reduces the amount of injury, whether football, baseball, or anything like that, soccer as well. We'll have a closed and locked system that will deter possible issues. Example may be vandalism. We can't control that sometimes, and if we'd have a more closed lock system, this would help us have a closed lock system to eliminate them issues. And then we'd have a greater opportunity for expansion of irrigation systems looking forward into the future. 5-10-year goals that we may have is, instead of the current gun system that we have, we may put up, look at it, putting up an irrigation, we call it a pivot. Or again, the increased athletic fields that are there. It just more expansion of irrigation may be needed. And from our aspect, the increased availability to the plot, which will hopefully help us increase yields. If we get more timing, more water out at a certain time, hopefully with Mother Nature's help as well, we can have increased yields out there too. A disadvantage that we have is neither entity, the community or the FFA or anything, we can't handle this on our own. And it's a big project. As you can see, we don't have the funds available. The specifications that we have is on the second page. The first thing is the estimated well depth of 140 feet. Now those of you that have dug a well or worked with a well before, it may or may not be 140 feet. What we come up with this number is that's the current existing wells around 130 feet that's currently out there right now, and talking to various people that have had wells in that area, that's about pretty significant number, general number of 130 to 140 feet. So that's the number we kind of are using things based off of from there. We would look at the size of the well being 8-inch casing with a 15 horsepower motor, and with a 15 horsepower motor, we'd be able to utilize, they make single phase motors now, which helps with our cost. We wouldn't have to go to a 3-phase motor, so we'd have a single phase motor, which would help us produce 350 gallons a minute. And that would be more than enough, even if we wanted to expand to an irrigator or to a pivot. In the future, we'd be able to utilize that very well. The above ground, we'd have a standpipe like currently what is out there, and below ground, we'd use PVC piping. Electrical needs would be, we connect the existing power source, which is large enough to handle both pumps. So also, at the same time, we'd also connect both wells together and utilize them as a backup for one or the other. In case one would go down, we'd be able to utilize the second well. The estimated, going to the third page, the estimated cost of the well project, we went and got 2 different bids. And when you're looking at, again, when you're looking at 2 different bids, we tried to condense things as much as we could. One bid was a little bit different than the other, but all in all, we got it pretty well put together, and you can see there's some different costs there. So the drilling for the 8-inch PVC pipe at 140 feet with a slotted screen and gravel pack and fittings. We need permit, grouting, drilling fees, a water sample, and a 12-foot steel casing. The drilling cost for that with Wheels Water Service out of Melrose is $9,609, estimate was. The Tyne Well Company coming at $12,560. For the pump and the pipe and the valves cost, kind of put that together. So we have a 6-foot pump with a 15 horsepower motor. We got a 15 horse motor and control box, a 4-inch steel pipe coming out with 4-inch valves, and we'd have a well seal on that. The cost from Wheels Water was $7,900, and Tyne Well would be $6,507. the drilling and pumping a test hole. Drilling a 5-inch test hole at 140 feet, Wheels Water would charge $1,120. However, if they're able to find water right away, they would continue drilling and would not charge us for a test hole, so we would take that off. But we're planning, we figured that into the bid right now for the price. Time well would be $2,100, no matter if they hit water on the first time or not. Testing the pump test well would be $90 an hour, and I figured roughly 8 hours for that with the generator cost. It would be $720 from Wheels. Test pumping the well from time wells at actually $115 an hour, so I figured that for 8 hours. It may take longer, it may take less, but that comes to $920 for time. The generator fuel, and that is another $750 for time. Irrigation pump well testing then at $145 an hour, and they said 10 hours roughly needed for that, and another $1,450 from Wheels Water. So when you add that up, it's $33,290 for Wheels Water, and Time Well would have $3,770. So when I add all three together, 3 columns together there, we find that the drilling cost and the pump and the drilling, when we add all 3 together, Wheels Water's bid is $20,799, where Time Well is $22,837.15. Going on to page 4, then, is we took, that was just for drilling of the well and the well itself. Now we're going to move on to, we need some other things involved, like electrical work and some excavation work to go along with it. So installation of the well and the pump was, Wheels, like I said, was $20,799. Time Well is $22,837. Bluestone Electric, their bid for the electrical work was $3,933.84. And they are willing to donate the labor to us, and the labor cost on that was $1,760. So we subtract that off, so the total cost for material, roughly, on electrical is $2,173.84. The excavation work, that's figured at $45 an hour for 4 hours roughly, and $28 for 4 hours. A&C Implement of Paynesville has actually said they would donate that to us. So that is a cost, even though I got that figured in, there'd be no cost to us for the use of excavator and skid loader on that. So the 5th page is the installation of the well and the pump, like I said, was $20,799. The electrical work is $2,173. With the installation of the well and pump, I use Wheels Water, because right now we're kind of leaning, that's when, as we looked at this, that's the direction we feel we would probably lean to right now based on the 2 bids, is Wheels Water. Number 1, a little bit cheaper cost. Number 2, we feel that we're more willing to work with us a little thing on certain small things here and there, and it's a smaller company that we're able to do business with. So the total cost, the total expenses that we have is $22,972.84. And we actually have some money that we're willing to give forward already. The Paynesville FFA alumni is willing to give $5,000. The Paynesville Area FFA chapter is willing to give $2,600. And DuPont Pioneer is willing to give $5,000. We're also working on some other resources at this time that are not fully approved yet, but that would, any resources, additional resources that we would get would go towards the project as well. So when we our total expenses, like I said, $22,972.84. Like I said before, when we're building a well, we don't know what, there may or may not incur some other expenses along the way. So we put a $5,000 buffer into it, is what we figured. So our total income was from the FFA alumni, the FFA, and DuPont Pioneer. That came in at $12,600. So what we would be asking for from the fund is roughly $15,372.84 at this time. One of the things that we wanted to do was look at paying it off back to you back to the fund over 4 years. And what we would do is we have plot entry fees that we have every year. So every company that participates in the plot, they pay an entry fee based on number of varieties that they have, whether it's corn and beans. But when that adds up, That's a roughly $3,500 a year, and we would pretty much designate that money as payback money over 4 years. So that would equate to about $14,000. And if there's any more or less at the end of the 4 years, you know, the alumni would make sure we pay the balance and stuff. So our projected payoff date would be June 2017, so 4 years from now. So anybody have any questions on what you see at this point?
I have a question. Donnie, what did you say about the existing well? Isn't there something going on with that too?
We've got a broken pipe right now, which is gonna get fixed. I mean, it's nothing real serious, but,
So not a huge costly thing.
no, I would imagine probably $200-300, I don't know.
So what you're asking us for is basically a loan?
Correct. We're asking you for a loan that will be paid back through the community service fund of roughly $15,000. And we won't know the final number until the well is drilled and the final numbers are in. But that's what we're looking at right now at this time.
So where is this well company out of?
Melrose.
Oh, Melrose, that's what you said.
Well, and from my opinion, you know, as far as I know, you're always having people that want to come in and put plots in. That's correct,
Yes.
at least from what I've
Yeah.
heard, they're kind of knocking on your door. to-
Yeah, we actually had a
see
company
that.
this year that decided to back out because of their own whatever reason. And we had 2 or 3 people, or 2 or 3 other companies in line, ready to get in.
I was
So-
gonna say, usually they say the only way you can get in is if somebody leaves, because
That's
there's
correct.
a waiting list.
That's correct.
So
That's
I do think that what they're saying is very reasonable as far as how they'd be able to pay things back. Do I think we could use another well? We are fighting for water all the time. You know, I know that we're very tight on capital budgets right now, but, you know, we'd love to get water to our 7th and 8th grade fields because it's like playing on concrete right now. So could we use it? Yeah, another well would be useful for us, particularly when we look at possibly expanding watering in the future. And it would also make sure that the plot got all the water that they need and our activity fields got all the water they need.
And a key point too is we tie the 2 wells together, so if the existing well were to go down, you would be able to use that for the athletic fields as a backup. And we would work with Max and Matt and Donnie on that, definitely, to make sure that got taken care of, so.
You're talking about a community service fund.
I'm
Is
not-
there a fund out there that has this $15,000 to loan? Or are we taking it out of the general fund or capital expenditure fund?
Know for sure if Matt is talking about, and I hadn't heard that it had been passed this year, but in the past, the city hall, they have given us some dollars and put it into a program. I don't know if that has come to pass or come up, so I don't know.
But wasn't that designed for keeping the fields and everything up?
It was, and that's where I
I
don't
wouldn't
know
Yeah.
I wouldn't wanna
if there's
take that away
something
from-
else. I don't either, so, but if Matt's, you know, and Matt's on that council now too, so I don't know if something else has come up, like in addition to that, but I think that would be a question we'd have to field with Matt.
Because I had not pulled any funds or
No,
had access to any of those funds, so I would have to check on that.
so if the city was looking at something new, maybe, but I think we'd have to ask Matt.
So we're in the process of making cuts on almost all of our funds right now. And then granted, it's a really nice deal and we need to make it work, but what's your suggestion to move forward?
Well, they are paying back the funds, so, you know, anything that we lost would be the interest. Part of the problem with our funds right now is that with the referendum, we're going to do all right for a period of time. You've run some of the simulations on that. It's really the further that you go down the road, the tougher and tougher and tighter that budget will become. So I think at least initially, we would probably be okay. If this was 4 years down the road, you know, I'm not sure I'd be able to say that, but it depends on what we do with all the things that we need to talk about as far as our budget. You know, our capital team just met. You can spend general funds on capital, but you can't take capital funds and spend it on general. Well, you know, we've been scrambling for weeks, beating that dead horse up, that the fact that we have all these projects to do, and not enough dollars to do them, to the point where during my report, I'll mention to the board that I'm going to take what I had hoped to have $100,000 reserve fund in capital and probably run it down to $100,000 when it's all said and done, which really starts narrowing things. If they were going to pay it back, to tell you the truth, I don't know if I can support it at all, just because I'm not sure we have the dollars to put in that way, but they are offering to pay the dollars back. You know, I would certainly rather wait a little longer and get my budget for next year finished, so that I have a better grip on all of that. We're in the process of that now. So I'm not sure what their timeline is, but from my point, I'd certainly like to have all my information up front before I made a solid recommendation.
That's a fair point. What we're thinking about is over the next 3 weeks, it's very difficult. There's a lot more wells going in, there's a lot more irrigation systems going in right now, and you know, to try to get on the list to get this thing done. If we would really like to get this thing done this summer, if possible, and it's the list in line. The longer we're waiting here, the more we're getting pushed off.
Bidding requirements, I understand we got 2 bids here, we are good to RFPs or anything for this?
I would have to check on the fact that, again, this isn't being paid for really by the district. So I'm not sure if we'd have to get a 3rd bid. It seems to me 2 bids would probably do what we need, but I would have to double check on that. You know, this is more of an informational meeting from my perspective. I don't know if you guys need a vote on something today, or whether you can wait 2 weeks and come back at the next meeting. You guys have to tell us.
Well, I think what we need is, I think you guys need to probably discuss with Matt and Max too, probably from that aspect.
That's where that,
To see where that money's gonna come from. I wasn't involved in the meeting with Matt and Max, so I apologize for that, that I don't have that information. But, you know.
Would your timeline work so that 2 weeks when we have our next board meeting, we'd be able to get back and?
Could we ask to be put on the talk to wheels and say, yeah, go ahead, put us on the list, but wait, because it's gonna be 3 weeks. And say, within 2 weeks, we'll have a final answer for you.
Yeah, as long as you understand that the board may choose not to
Yes.
do it.
And then if you guys said no, we'd call them up and say, take us off the list.
I think it sounds like a good proposal. We just need to follow up on a few of these issues and just make sure that we're doing it correctly.
Okay.
So we should table it for a couple of weeks and.
Yeah, I think that'd be appropriate. That'll give us a chance to go a little further down the road with our budget for next year, and we'll be able to tell you, at least I'll be able to provide the board with additional information, and then they will be able to make a more informed decision.
Any other questioning on the proposal itself, or anything that?
I think it's a great proposal.
So you're very complete.
Very thorough.
Yep, very good job. The only other question would be, you know, the Bluestone electricians, or electrical, who are they?
Kenneth.
Never mind.
That's my
Name
company.
on there.
That's my company.
Yeah, okay. Oh, no, that's, I just didn't know, that's fine.
That's why, I'm gonna donate all the letters.
You know, and you guys do such a great job, and, I mean, if it wasn't for that, we just didn't know some of these things, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer for us too, because we do get the money back, and you guys can go above and beyond, you know, anything. You know, you guys have been super, so we really appreciate it, and the kids do. I mean, it's splendid to have a group of guys together that is doing something for the kids. That
And
there's
it
nothing there for you.
it was really fun last week. I got there late, but I really didn't have to do anything. The kids were there, and I appreciate the teachers' support of it, because the kids were getting out of class to be there, and to really just sit back and let the kids learn. We had kids coming up, well, what are you doing, or why are we doing this? You know, and this is what it's all about. And for the educational purposes of the kids, and we want to get, you know, it's not, we have a lot of, I don't farm myself, but I'm in the egg business period. I'm a district sales manager for a seed company. So egg business is huge, and the opportunities that are in agriculture today are phenomenal. And the technology is just, it's booming. So more people, kids we can encourage at a young age like this, the more we're gonna have for the future of ag.
Okay, well, thanks for coming in, and we'll readdress it in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
All right, we're back to number 2 on the business, which is to review a first reading of the revised 12-13 budget.
That would be Exhibit A. I'll just walk everybody through the sheet. If you take a look at the first column, it just gives you general fund, food service, community education, capital, debt service, goes down. If, the second one is, in last June, that was the adopted budget, all right? And the revised budget is the next column. And then the change in the budget is that, in that first part is the revenue coming into the district. Okay, everybody see how it works? The next column over is what we spent, or at least what we expected to spend. And then the next column over is the revised budget that we're revising at this time, and then again, the change. And you can take a look through, for some of the changes as far as expenses and stuff, health and safety was a big thing for the capital budget, and I'll go through that a little bit more. For the general fund, some of the pieces really had to do with the fact that we expended more was really staff hours. We gained some there, but we also lost some from special ed. I mentioned that to the board. I think some of our positives will offset some of the negative with the special ed. Our workman's comp went up, our utilities went up, we had more lane changes than we thought we were gonna do, and that kind of talks about why there was a $30,000 change as far as that. At the same time, we didn't lose as much as, where the biggest revenue piece was, is that we really didn't gain as much revenue in special ed. And that's where that big difference was as far as our negative budget for special ed. We still don't know where that's gonna end up. We truly don't. And, I mean, I still had adjustments this year on last year's special ed. So the state makes the adjustments as they need to, and it takes a while for that all to shake out. It's a very hard budget to look at. Food service, as far as the negative piece, when we get down to food service and why we're deficit spending a little bit, really had to do with the fact that we changed over to the new rules and regulations, and we needed to provide our staff with some extra time to do some of that, from cutting up the food to putting it in the computer so that we had our menu set. When you go down into where it says general fund, kind of the halfway point, it kind of talks again about what we projected originally at the beginning, and then what happened this year. So you really, for general fund, it was looked at, we deficit spent 198, and we're really only deficit spending 192. Now, when I talked about the referendum, I talked about 135,000 as our deficit spending. What happened though is really the special ed, and the reason that there's a difference there is because that was, you adopted that budget before we knew that we're gonna get the literacy dollars. So that was kind of that $60,000 swing in there. But now with the special ed and some of those other pieces, it's brought it back up. So it looks really good. And that, boy, you hit that pretty close. But we really didn't hit it that close because there's that $60,000 in there that really is more than what we had thought would happen in the end, if that makes sense to everybody. All right? Food service, reason for the negativity again is because we paid our staff with some extra time. That's really what it came down to. And we also bought them some technology that they needed in order to input the information into the system. For community ed, we're down, they've just spent more than what they had projected. They thought they would have more of a budget left, and they're down, but that doesn't come out of our general funds. Community ed is self-sufficient, so is food service. Capital, the main difference in that is really health and safety. We did a really major project in the fume hoods in the kitchen, and you're always 1 year late on that. All right, so next year we really get the funds to repay us for that, but we don't gain anything with it. Those funds can only be used for the health and safety projects. If there's any excess to it, then it ends up going back to reduce the levies for the communities. So although it looks big that way, really it's not. If you take health and care or health and safety into piece, debt service is really our buildings, the projects that you had, the auditorium and and middle school. And again, we don't make any money, we don't lose any money on that. We have a balance there now, but it just pays for our bills to take care of that. If there's any extra, it eventually goes back again, and we're not allowed to levy for as much, so it's adjusted. If you take a look, last year, at the end of the audit, we had $392,699 in our reserve fund. We projected that we'd have $278,800 at this time, at the end of the year, and what we actually have is the $239,000. So we are deficit spending yet at the end of this year. And it doesn't leave us much of a fund balance because really some of those dollars are set aside for severance type of packages. You can't necessarily spend those. You've got to have those in your budget so you can pay those contractual type of items. So questions kind of on this. You know, I've given you a lot of information. It's really taking a look at what we projected and where we are right now. And it's adjusted. The board doesn't have to do anything with this. It's kind of the first reading. So you can take a look at it and ask me any questions and bring them up.
A quick one on
For
the
next-
health and
yep.
safety. So you have a health and safety expense.
You have a health and safety levy that we levy every year for the
Okay, but
community.
for a specific reason.
Yes.
Now you did that.
Well,
Now,
you
when
levy
get
and
the money
then,
the
yeah.
next year, does it pay that off?
Yes, it does. It pays it off.
Okay.
What you do is you levy, but you're always 1 year behind. So
So in essence, we're gonna get the money that will, in essence, pay this.
pay off the health and safety portion. They do combine the health and safety and the capital together into one lump sum. But the reason mainly for the deficit piece there is that health and safety piece, which we do get bought back. At the end, you know, I'll talk about next year a little bit. You know, we're looking at, and you've been part of the capital piece, you know what we've got, and we just don't have a lot of money to spend. And I'll bring the capital to the board at the next meeting, and we'll go through it, and we'll show you what projects we picked and where we are as far as the budget and that kind of stuff. But I am certainly concerned because we will not have much reserve fund for our budget next year, just getting the things done that we need to get done. But we'll talk about that at the next meeting. Any other questions on this? And again, this is kind of the first reading of this. Certainly I'll bring it back at the next meeting, or you can call me and ask me questions. We'll get all the questions answered that we can before we adopt the revision.
There to adopt one more revision for this year.
I think we do have to adopt one more, the revision, yeah. Because we'll be hitting the end of the year then, and it'll be pretty much accurate as far as where we're at. But again, you know, my concern is the deficit spending that we continue to do. Any other questions on this?
Okay. Moving on to number 3, review and consider approval of Matt's piece.
You have seen this once and you have approved the dollar amount here. So the $14,000 is approved in the Mets piece. What has changed and why I have brought it back to you is that there have been added a few stipulations that were not on the original piece. You agreed to the $14,000, but you didn't necessarily agree to the stipulations because they were not on the original piece that I brought to you. All right, that's why I felt the need to bring it back for a vote, just because you want to look at those, make sure that we can agree to them, and then vote on that. You're not so much voting on the dollar amount, as you are saying, yep, we can live with the other stipulations. And then if the board does approve this, we will cut a check for Mets as quick as we can to get that off our docket.
So you see any issue with the stipulations?
No, I don't. I mean, in essence, we just need to let this end. And just let it go. It also means you can't go out in the community and, you know, you have to be positive about it and just let it end. That's really what it comes down to. That when this is over, it's over. When you pay the check, you pay it, and we move on past it, Mets moves on past it.
Make a motion to approve the final, construction management proposal.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Lou and a second by Cheryl. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Both same sign. Motion carries.
And I will, if it's okay with the board, I am going to cut that check as quick as we can and get this situation over. Good.
Okay, number 4, review and consider approval of resolution adjusting educational programs and positions effective for the 13-14 school year.
I presented most of this information to you the last time, so you've seen this. I'm going to go through them again and just talk a little bit about it. The one FTE elementary is a retirement in a savings. It is a special ed, so we didn't save as much money as we might have if it would have been a regular ed teacher, but it was a special ed teacher, so that's the amount that we saved. Right now, we're looking at a .242 reduction in really tax classes when we go to the other pieces. I would say this Exhibit C is also tied into Exhibit D and Exhibit E. Because at the end of this, the board will have a few decisions to make. You can either approve the reductions, which in case we go on to the other pieces. You could say, no, we're not going to do that, in which case it really makes the other two pieces moot, from my point. Or you could table it, in which case, again, it sets it aside at least for a while. There are specific timelines that we do need to follow with this. So I would have a wiggle room enough to table it for one meeting, but that would be it. After that, if you don't act on it, it would be like not acting, period, because then we would miss the timelines and we would not be able to go down that road. I don't like, of all my jobs, this has been the one that I probably dislike the most. Because it affects people. From my perspective, I want to make sure that we offer all of our students the best programming we can for the budget we have. You guys have heard me talk about deficit spending a lot. Sooner or later, we do need to get our deficit spending under control to a certain point. Am I worried for next year? No, to tell you the truth, I think when our budget comes out, we'll be fine. We get the new referendum, we're gonna have, $392,000 additional from that referendum. But at the same time, remember, we're deficit spending almost $200,000 right now. Our capital is gonna be really low as far as reserve. Our reserve for general is not very high. If we don't leave some kind of wiggle room in there, we could run into some issues very quickly. I'll probably have $125,000 if everything shakes out the way that we believe in capital, for instance. It wouldn't take much to have something happen where that reserve would be gone and we'd have to look at even dipping into our general and helping, heaven forbid, if we had a roof that leaked really bad and we had to spend some dollars to get it fixed. In our capital budget, there are certainly some dollars in there, but I can't predict the future. I can't predict if something's going to go down where we have to pay a large sum. So the .42 reduction in facts is a savings of $14,581. The .087 reduction in industrial tech does not impact one Lance Trans class. What it would mean is that that particular instructor will be one semester class short. Now, for both of these reductions, I can tell you this. Even if you approve it tonight, it doesn't mean the end of it. There are a couple things that need to happen, particularly for unrestricted, unrequested leaves of absence, all right? Number one, there is a 15-day waiting period, in which case the two staff members in question here can ask for a hearing. That hearing is already set in the time and date in the sheets that we would go to next. So even if you approve this tonight, and we approve the other motions, there could be a hearing, and you would still have to approve it 15 days from now, the next board meeting. All right? What will happen is that, let's say you tabled it, and so we're not going to go there. Then we would come back at the next meeting, and you would see virtually the same thing. But then we're out of time, because I have to, these decisions have to be made by July 1st. You wouldn't have enough time to put 15 days for hearing before going into July 1st. Does that make sense? So you do have the option of one meeting, but after that, that option is gone. Even if we approve these things, my suggestion certainly, and I've been working with Lori, is that we continue to look at the numbers. Things can be adjusted at the start of the class, particularly I think in Lance Trans, which has a history of changing in students going in. From my perspective, I'm certainly going to continue to look at that in all these classes that are in question. and you can always add back if you so choose. You know, and certainly my job is to look at it. One of the things that the Lance Trans instructor certainly said was there was concern for safety. He took me on a tour, I looked, I think that deserved enough to get that class back, but that still leaves one class short. Now, the numbers may change, and we may eventually need to add that time back, but again, because of those deadlines, if you don't act within a certain time frame, then you lose that option to do that. So the board needs to understand that. There is no option to adding back, you can always do that. I mean, you can do that the day before school started. But this piece you can't. Any questions on 2 and 3? And I can certainly, so there's been some questions on numbers and things that we did not offer this year because of not enough students. And I did bring that along, so if the board wants to see that, I can go over that with the board again. Show you the classes, show you the numbers that were registered for those classes, and why we didn't offer other classes. When that happens, bumping occurs, unfortunately. And the bumps just keep happening until, and in addition, I had mentioned to the board last time that Cold Spring Corey was going to use one of our teachers a little bit more, and then they backed out of that because of their own budget cuts, which brought that teacher then in to our own system for more time, which again causes the bumping to occur. If I didn't think that we could offer an appropriate curriculum with these cuts, I wouldn't have offered it. Would I love to offer every class that comes up and a student wants? Absolutely. I would love to. We'd have more teachers, we'd have more classes for students, there is no doubt I would love to do that. But if you guys remember, a number of years ago, you had $1.2 million in your reserve fund. And I think that was probably around 208, something like that. And now we're down to the number that I presented today. Sooner or later, we're going to have to look at our budget, run a very efficient budget. I want to keep the teachers full-time. That's always my goal. If we can do that, I absolutely want to do that. In fact, there's a couple ideas that I have floating around that I'll look at, but it'll take some time to look at those, and I'm still running on time crunch. Reducing the 6 period classes is a savings of $15,753. If a teacher teaches a 6th class, it costs, I think, $5,230, $40, $50 to offer that class. We're reducing 3 of them. Even then, I'm a little worried because one of those classes will make our 6th grade math class go up higher, so you may eventually hear me say, it's not working, we need to add another section, because one of the reasons I believe we're doing better on our math scores is because we've been able to keep smaller class sizes. So when you look at this, where are you going to add back? I mean, I could come up with reasons to add everything back that we reduce. To me, it's not as much of a cut as it is a reduction, just because students didn't request certain classes enough. The board in the end, and maybe we'll have to have a separate discussion about this and have talks about, because where do you draw the line in the sand? I don't have a good answer for that. Is it 2 students in a class? Is it 5 students in a class? Is it 10? That's where we get to Lance Trans, but then we have safety issues that you have to also consider, because we don't want anybody hurt. But that discussion is going to have to take place eventually, so everybody feels comfortable, because nobody is going to feel comfortable when we make cuts that particularly affect people. Nobody.
But the reduction of the 6th classes for 3, that's a different topic.
Yes,
than
because
the reduction of the class offering.
that does, well, no,
Because you
because
don't have enough students.
no, those classes already have students in them for the most part. But if by reducing a section, for instance, you might have 20 kids in a class instead of 10 in a class. Okay, when we looked at Lance Trans, that's kind of what happened. You took one section away, so it caused the rest of the sections to go up, which then you have to have the discussion, is there a safety issue, do the class sizes get too big? You know, you have to have a look at all of those things. So a 6th period class may not necessarily be an offering. One of those reductions is to reduce, by eliminating it, the class sizes in 6th grade math went up. All right? We're still offering sections. Nothing stopped with that. but the class size went up. I don't have to look back at the list. I'm not sure if it reduced any particular class. I think for some of the art classes,
Sixth grade math?
yeah,
The sixth grade math, the math classes will go from 29 to 30, going down into the 3 sections. Which, what we have found over the last 3 years where our math scores have gone up, we have offered that 4th section in math and had our class numbers between like 22 and 25. And we have seen our MCAs and our math scores go up because that's just a tough year in math between that 5th and 6th grade that we have just seen a huge improvement. Now, our math department has done a lot of alignment with the curriculum. We've started the boot camp, but I do believe that smaller math class has been a big part of that.
Can you go back to what you said originally? You said something about going from 29 to 30.
That
Explain that a little more.
our numbers for the 6th grade math class, with the numbers that we have coming in.
Because that's fine, if you have 5 classes.
We have probably 84 kids coming from our 5th grade to our 6th grade next year. Okay, so if all works out really good, you would have basically 26 to 27 in a class. But with specific programs like your special education and some of those things, it will cause 2 of those classes to probably go up to 29. And then you're gonna have.
But you were just talking about taking a 6th hour away. That's my
So
curiosity.
the 6th hour class would be adding that 4th hour.
But that didn't have
math.
anything to do with special ed.
no.
Okay, so
No.
we're not
No.
talking
You're-
special
No,
ed.
it's just how kids will end up being scheduled because of some other.
Right, so what you're saying is the classes might go from 29 to 30 by taking a 6th hour?
No, go from 25
To 30.
to 29 to 30.
In a perfect world, when you schedule a building, every class would be of equal size. Schedules don't work that way because of other factors, whether it be special ed or something else that a student needs. It never works, in all my years, it never works so that I got everything to go exactly the same unless all those classes were at the same time and you could just divide it. So what happens is that when you schedule, some classes may be at 25, but then you may have some classes at 30. Part of the difficulties with our size of building is just that if you take 75 and you divide it by 3 sections, you get 25 in a section, right? Doesn't work real well divided by 2 sections now. So it just, as you add more sections, your class sizes go down. As you remove sections, your class sizes go up. The 6 period classes keep the teacher at full time. All right? It just means they're teaching an extra class. A full year class is a little over $5,200. So.
But doesn't a normal teacher only, they have
5 classes. If they teach a 6, they get that.
One duty and 1 prep.
Correct.
So that's the normal.
Yes.
That the 6th classes, we're giving extra duty to
Yeah.
a teacher because of the influx of kids.
So when you reduce it, you're still keeping the teacher at full time, a
Right.
1.0, but they don't get the extra dollars.
Yes.
What the impact is taking that class opportunity away from kids. I mean,
Well,
Well, it's
Well,
not always
not always, no.
It may be another class, or it may be creating more or less kids in a
section.
current class. So like
Yes.
in the 6th grade math, we have 3 classes that are offered. By not offering that 4th section, we're just raising the numbers in that class.
Right.
But
In
last
the
week when you were
case-
here, you had gone through macro and these other
Yep,
classes.
in the case
does that
of
not play
say,
into this?
in the case of say the macro, if you would choose to add the macro back in, it is going to cause an extra half of a 6th hour class, okay? And without it, then you are taking that opportunity away. With it, you're adding an opportunity. So it depends on what the class is, if it's just changing numbers in the current course that's being given, or if it's an elective.
So wouldn't it be better if you would say, identify those 3 classes? Instead of just saying there's 3 6-hour, 3/6.
Well, that information was in the information that I shared last week. Now, I didn't bring everything with me today,
But in summary, for this year process, because as we are thinking about it, it's different again, because we just, last time was our first really information, and now let's see how it actually looks, and then sometimes it's nice to have it again in front of us.
I can certainly do that from this point. I didn't know that
Yeah.
was what the board wanted. Certainly, we could do that, but keep in mind also that if we're reducing the sixth period class, it was caused because there weren't enough students enrolled in it.
And that's understandable, we just
Yeah.
need to have information in front of us also to say, yes, this makes sense to us, and if somebody questions, to say,
Yeah.
these are actually the realities.
Yep, I do want to bring up one other piece, because the board needs to understand this too, and evidently my addition isn't real good some days. Because when we count it, we have to have 15 days between, so if you do not approve today, there won't be 15 days between the next board. I assume that there was this time. There won't be after the first June meeting to get 15 in, so we would have to move the June meeting to, I think, 2 days, or 1 day. 1 day pass so that we get 15 days and then get the hearing.
Let's move it out a day.
Back a day. There's 14 days between there's 15 between this meeting and the next meeting,
Because we're first and third.
first and third, but there's not 15 days between your next meeting and the meeting after that. There's only 14 days, and we would need 15 for that. And then the paraprofessional is really a matter of less students in really ECSE, which caused some bumping to occur. There's a little bit of change, but it's bumping, and really that's a reduction based on the needs that we have in the building. Regardless of anything, again, if something changes and we get more students, but I think we have one less section of ECSE next year, which then causes the bumping to occur downward.
Did I miss something? Was that in the last sheet? that you
I don't know if all this information was in that information I sent you.
Including the paraprofessional?
The-
Because the one I read.
Yeah, I did
had
talk about
another
the
paraprofessional that was gone
Yeah.
for some reason, but this paraprofessional is a different person. On the
Bumping.
sheets that I looked at. I just-
Bumping probably occurred, that I would have to go
So
back.
the
I
other
believe-
person that was there bumped into the position.
I would guess it bumped on. I didn't bring everything I have. I would have to relook at to see that. But this is the person that would get eventually it bumps down to.
It's amazing how much of that, and I never took that into consideration. When you start watching if a pair leaves and everybody starts bumping around, it's,
Well, I thought that when I read the sheet, it showed some person that was gone and it was a savings of like $15,000. And I don't recall seeing, but there was another sheet that had the list of all these people, their names on it.
Yeah, but I'm looking right now
And there
to
was
see if I brought
there was
that
one
with
with
me.
the name on it and it was a different number. And then we now have
The reason that
that's less. And
The reason that there's less on that, Bruce, is because in the bumping, there was a 1 more day. So as they bump down, they're bumping into a 5-day position versus a 4-day position. All right, so they're going from 4 days here, but they're bumping into 5 days here. This person that's leaving is 5 days, but the one coming in is still 5 days. So there wasn't as much of a savings as
so
we
then
thought.
that actually was a $4,000 a loss in savings.
It would have been a day. The number that you have there, I believe, is the accurate number for what we would save. I didn't
So-
take the other piece.
But in this whole thing, then we go to that next one down, number 1 of the following, where we're adding in a.
Because that's
position
adaptive PE for
$7,000.
special ed. Our numbers are up for adaptive Phi ed. We need to add some time to it.
So if you have that for those, where did the $100,000 come into?
Part of that is, most of that, Bruce, is revenue that we anticipated we would get from special ed.
Right, but is that because we had a loss of some students midterm without adjusting?
I think there
or-
were some loss of students that they didn't anticipate, and I can't tell you 100% because I didn't.
No, I
I believe there was a loss of students that they didn't anticipate that left. Then I believe there was a family that also left. Okay, So it was really a numbers game, and we didn't have as many students in other, open enrolled from other districts. So if I'm from another district and I open enroll in Paynesville, that is charged back to the district, comes in kind of as revenue for us, plus any educational needs of that student. So if that number goes down, that also impacts our revenue.
So in essence, if all of a sudden that changed and it was the end of September and a series of students left out of that department, you just continue spending all that money
Well, you
until
can't-
we find out we're short $100,000 or?
You can't, once you get people working under a contract, you can't just say, oh, by the way, unless you hire them that way. I mean, if I hire somebody as a temporary person, as long as that student's there, that's one thing. But otherwise, what you're saying is, okay, if for whatever reason, we have some students leave, and by the way, you know, I don't need you anymore, so now you're done. You know, it doesn't work that way. Yeah, and sometimes, yep, it hits you. There's other times when you're staffed and you get students in that come in. And I've come to this board and said, we need another para because we have a student that needs a one-to-one, and we don't have a para there for it. So it does work both ways, but if I hire somebody under the understanding that it's just temporary,
You won't
then-
get anybody.
well, you don't always get anybody. Sometimes you get them and you don't, but,
And that's one of the
Yeah.
hardest things, I think, as a board member, because in some of us that work in businesses in the public and stuff, when fluctuation happens, we have the ability to change it, but here as the contracts, when you sign contracts, it is what it is. And you can't change it. And some days you make it, and some days you don't. And this is one of them, how we didn't make out very well, but we've been making out very well with other issues.
and, you know, and to be fair, these are the reductions, all right? These are actual reductions. There are some savings that we are going to get. We have about I think it was about a $39,000 savings, and I wrote everything except put the number down on there, because we had a couple more seasoned staff members retire. And you always get an initial savings for that for most of the part. And we can use our literacy dollars in virtually any way we want. So there's another $62,000 that we have some options to do. You can use that to pay for staff that are coming out of the general fund, which ends up being a saving to our general fund, where this year wasn't really paid for staff. That's one of the reasons we didn't get it as hard as special ed, because all those dollars weren't used, so they carry over with us. So I want the board to also know that we're getting those savings too, on top of these savings. But remember, we're also deficit spending, you know, close to $200,000 right now.
So one last question on
Yep.
adaptive PE.
Yep,
So that means we had an increase in the needs of students
Yes.
that justify that
yes,
as of today.
yeah, going into next year. And we did check, we did do a special ed study, and we are, remember, the teacher that we're not bringing back was a special ed teacher. So the reduction is in great part to special ed, that's why we didn't get as much of a savings. This is just one of those needs, if you need to have more time in that. And the study that the West Central Ed did for us indicated that we need more time in adaptive PE. And my intent every year is to try to get as much, is right down to the nuts and bolts as I can, so that we know what we need to staff for.
I hate to keep asking questions,
No.
but when you're working on these reductions, are you working with the staff on it? Like when you're reducing the 6th hour, in your best estimate, you are still going to provide the same education to the kids with what we have. Okay, we have good systems, test scores now with a little less class. We're pretty certain we're gonna hold those test scores up. And do you engage the staff in this
Do
stuff a little
you
bit?
really want staff to be engaged, deciding who is going to get amongst them is not going to be there? You know, I've run building for a long time, and that is the one area that I've talked with staff about. We certainly let them know, but quite frankly, I wouldn't be in a lot of favor of bringing staff into deciding who stays
And nor do they want to.
and who leaves.
And,
It puts them in an awfully bad situation.
and Bruce, what we do is we have the kids register for their classes, and we do get the number of choices as far as what the students want, as far as, you know, if we've got 25 students that want to take honors class, or the honors class. We have, you know, Oh.
My question
You know,
would be
and
that
so
if
we
you're-
look
we
at
just-
that, and go ahead.
If you're just a math class, okay, so you take these kids, 25 kids, and you put them in a 30, and we don't engage the instructors, so we make all this great decision, and it goes back to the instructors when they find out what we did, and they say, well, that ain't gonna work.
Well, that's a tougher piece, but I would tell you this, okay, if I'm an instructor and you come to me and you tell me that you're gonna put 25 kids in my class versus 15 kids in your class, my class, what do you think my answer is gonna be? I'm certainly gonna say it's better for me to have less kids. That one class is that's a tough decision piece there. I could go either way. In the end, when this all shakes out, you may hear me come back and say, we believe we need this. But I haven't had a chance to analyze our test scores to see what's going on. I haven't had a chance to do any of that thing. I want to start doing this stuff as timely as I can. It's very difficult to bring in. The decisions, to tell you the truth, that are made here aren't even made from my point of view or even Lori's point of view. Guess who has the most say in this?
Kids.
The kids, because they choose the classes. If nobody chooses a class except for 2 kids, I didn't make that number up. The kids decided what they wanted to take. If some of those classes that we had looked at had bigger numbers in them, guess what would be on the list of things that we didn't offer? Those classes would be back there, but in fairness, it will always be a give and take. You only have a limited number of students. You only have a limited number of places where you can put the students. And in the end, if students go to this class, they come from some other class. So if I pull those students into me, I guarantee you that someplace those numbers are going down. So if I grab them all, chances are it could be completely different next year. You've got a completely different group of kids. There may be a completely different type of recommendation that might be done. Maybe they'll all split out evenly and the keep numbers will stay up and everything. Be a wonderful world. But in the end, that's the kids decide. They're the ones choosing the courses, not us.
So in your best estimate, the 2 of you, this is what we need to do for the budget.
I wouldn't have brought this forward if I didn't think that we needed to look this way, because I can always add back. I cannot go down this road in a couple weeks.
But you don't see a ton of other options.
You're definitely, again, I'll bring it up to the board. 4 years ago, you had $1.2 million in your budget.
No. As far
In
as
reserve.
where you're gonna cut this expense.
Well, if everything was as good and all the numbers were up, I wouldn't be suggesting any of the unrequested lead pieces. You probably still
Do we
get,
need a motion to approve this?
I have
You do.
one more comment
Yep.
to make on it. And the timing of this thing is a little bit unfortunate, because we haven't seen the budget with the new referendum dollars in it yet.
the state has just,
And I understand the process of that, but that would really be helpful in me making a decision on this thing.
you can choose to table it. If you do, you just need to move your board meeting back a day. That,
If we do table that.
I will do my best to get you as much information as I can. That's all I can promise you. You know, Thursday, I meet at a C meeting. They're gonna give us the budget, I'll learn more about it there. Friday morning, I'm meeting with a group of superintendents who have a lot more experience than I do, and we're gonna talk about the budget there.
But I still think at the end of the day, we have to do some trimming of the budget. I mean, we're only looking at 88,000, well, not even 80,000?
Well, you're really gaining about 80,000, but you're also gaining the 39,000 from the other ones, and you're gaining whatever we decide to do with the literacy dollars. Keep in mind.
Right, but still,
Yeah.
I'll refresh everybody's memory. This referendum that we passed is still not gonna do it for us for the next 10 years. We still need, what did that tell us? Almost $200,000 worth of cuts every year. We're looking at 80.
And part of the problem that you're also facing is your class, you're losing enrollment in the district.
Right.
Just because there's, I think it's about 80 seniors leaving. There's right now about 65, we're hoping we'll get a little more, maybe closer to 70 kindergarten kids coming in. So part of what hasn't happened, at least in my belief, is that your enrollment is going down. everybody would tell you every time you drop 15 kids, that's equivalent to 1 FTE that you should reduce to keep things equal. My belief is that that really hasn't happened. I understand all the reasons why. They're tough decisions, they're not fun decisions, they're horrible decisions.
But we still have to make them. And
Sooner or later, I mean, you can also, I mean, you could look, I left the budgets in the high schools alone. Now, they took a hit last year, and the elementary took a hit, everything took a hit last year to some degree. You can eliminate those budgets and you'll save, the same amount, but you won't have paper, you won't have pencils, and, I don't know where the teachers go with that. There's always gonna be limited dollars, and I don't have a good answer for that.
But you're saying if we don't decide tonight, then these here,
You-
they need to be decided tonight to move forward.
Bruce,
No.
one
Or
thing
that
is
will wait, if we could wait for David till the one day
You
later.
could table it, but we'd have to move the board meeting.
right, or you can always bring back as well.
Yes.
If you
Well, we
would,
can always bring back.
Yeah.
Right,
I
that's
don't,
what I'm saying.
I don't think that's why
Yes,
moving the board
you
meeting
could
meeting
bring
up or
back.
whatever.
Even if you approve it, we could come up with a justifiable reason on why we would need to bring something back, and we could bring it back.
Right.
The board, you guys could direct me and say, bring it back. You could do that a week before school started.
So if we have the information from the referendum, what's our analysis that we would get from that to maybe change our minds here?
And again, it is not the first years that are gonna be the problem. That's part of this whole dilemma. You've run the simulations, it's not until we go down the road a little bit, but one of the things that really worked out well is that you were able to run your last referendum, the full time of that referendum. And I believe that's one of the reasons the community looked at it and said, geez, you ran a 10-year referendum and you made it to the end of the referendum. If we do not start looking at our budget very seriously, you simply won't make it to the end of the next referendum. So that means the board will be forced to either make massive cuts or go to the community for another referendum. This is a negotiation year. We're gonna be negotiating this year. We're gonna be negotiating next, 2 years after that. That stuff, I don't know what's gonna shake out of there.
So we could, if we agreed to this tonight, after you get the new budget,
And I come back to you guys and you see the budget and you say, hey, we need to
so
throw
at the
some
next
money
board
back in
meeting,
there.
we can throw this back again.
What I do is we revise this. Now, if we do that, I mean, there's a couple things. It depends on how you revise it. We'd have to look at all that. There are 2 staff members that this impacts. So, quite frankly, a revision could impact them. It might not impact them. It depends on where everything shakes out and how it goes. But you can absolutely bring it back. I mean, that is the one piece that you can do. You can direct me to move in any direction in regards to that. In my opinion, it would be better if we moved down that direction and added back, rather than set everything back to where you're adjusting your board meetings and all that, when you can, in essence, change it when you want to change it. But it is really the wish of the board.
So, we're just looking for a motion to accept Exhibit C.
If we do not accept this exhibit,
No, I'm just asking what we're looking for.
you need to have a motion
Yeah, I
to
think
approve.
that, so numbers 3 and 4 and 2 are
They're tied into it.
And they're all separate motions.
One without the other, you can't do.
If we table one, we table all of them.
Yep, those 3 anyway.
I'll need a recommendation to approve the budget this time here.
It'd be the reductions for the budget.
Yep, reduction from the budget.
And I'll second that one.
I'm just gonna make one more comment while we're for discussion here.
Absolutely.
With, I think you said we could have to spend about 135,000.
My prediction was 135 until we kind of got hit with a couple
So-
things in the special ed, yep.
Okay, so if we added for next year, then, what's the budget, if we take that 135 and add those referendum dollars to it, which is about 300,000.
392.
392,000, then we have a surplus of, what is that, $265,000 for next year. If that budget's, and I understand that, what you do now impacts what happens 10 years down the road, 5 years down the road, but I also look at a $265,000 budget surplus and ask, why are we increasing class sizes? And why are we taking these certain classes away?
Well,
That's my concern, and I understand, the budgeting issues that we have, but it's just very difficult for me to make cuts of this consequence when it's looking like we have a surplus right now.
but the cuts you're making, you have to keep in mind, then it gets back to the numbers game. Okay, there are classes we did not offer because there were 2 kids that applied for it. All right, there's one class that we didn't offer that 9 kids. I think that, at least the required type of classes, I think some of our art classes might have had a few
The
more.
macro had the 9.
Yep.
Several of the business classes were under 6, in that.
9 to me, in light of this
Yeah,
budget,
that's-
really, are we taking, it's not allowing these guys to take that course.
Well-
I understand that we get it next year, but they might not.
7 of them could take it next year, 2 would not be able to.
So that's
And yes, and
how we can,
if you direct me to add back that section, we can do that, and I can figure out exactly what that will cost the
the
district.
one that I would feel more strongly about would be the 6th-hour math, as far as affecting a number of kids in a program that we're seeing successful with that raised number of students, and I think Bob agrees with me. At the same time, it's something we can look at adding in at a later date as well. I'd love to offer all of the classes at the same time, looking at the proposal that I'm giving to Bob and that we've discussed is, efficiency, the budget and what we are offering, and to give you something that we feel is a balance of those. So,
Did you check into the possibility of those 2 seniors being able to get the macro class online?
we can find it in a PSEO online program at, where was it? Winona. So if they want to take it online, they could take it, which is not the same as what I would say the brick and mortar classes.
We lose dollars for that, though, right?
We lose dollars for that, yeah, that's different than the Infinity Online.
If you added back, for instance, the 1 class of macro, and you added the 6th math class, you're probably looking at somewhat over $10,000 that you'll have added back to the budget.
Since you're seem to be concerned about that 6th grade math, then why don't you just reduce the 6th grade classes by 2 instead of 3? Put that math back in.
That's what she's talking about.
Yeah.
This is that and the macro classes.
And the macro.
Well,
guys,
It's kind of your decision.
Now,
I mean, I went at it.
now you can see what starts to happen, right?
And I truthfully, remembering the conversations that Mark is remembering back when they told us we had to make, X number of cuts to.
Or do you guys want to, in 3 years from now, do a $500,000 cut?
So.
And then see where we're gonna be.
It is just the
So
strangest
My
dynamics.
proposal came from knowing we're in there.
Yeah, it just is, it's just an interesting dynamic in that, you feel good when you add those classes back. You really do, you feel great about it. You don't feel so good when the other piece is in there, but in my observations throughout my career, when you start adding one, guess what happens? And we can add that one, this one really looks good too.
Because Lord knows, come start of the next school year, we're gonna have parents, potential parents and teachers here saying, we cannot do it with that. And then we're gonna have to sit there and try to explain or try to figure out what we're gonna do, but still, at the end of the day, we've seen all those charts, guys, and I don't care how you do your math, we are still supposed to be cutting at least 1 FTE for this year. And then some, and we're not even doing that hardly.
Well, we really do need to build our reserve fund up
Yes.
somewhat. We can't stay where we're at. If you do one bad,
We're gonna not make
Glitch
it 10
could
years
knock
with
us
this
right.
referendum. I don't think we're gonna anyhow, but I'm just saying, we definitely are not gonna, if we're just gonna be hee-haw back and forth, and $10 or $20 or $50 or whatever it is, I mean, everything is added back to the budget, and if we're watching what we're supposed to be doing, be fiscally responsible for this school district, we need to start doing some cuts. It's not a huge thing, it's not putting anybody out on the street.
I can promise you this, I would rather not be here talking to the board about this.
And I'd rather not be here in a couple of years when we have to do $300,000 of cut, and then where we're gonna go with that. Because we'll have the same amount of kids probably, and it's really gonna affect us.
You know, I think our enrollment will be down a little bit next year. I mean, based on at least what I'm seeing. That could change. We went up. That's one of the reasons we didn't get hit as hard. But we could have been hit harder this year if the fact our enrollment did not go up.
And the thing is none of these reductions have, I mean, the programs across the board, we have very good programs. And, you know, if you look, our enrollment goes down because our kindergarten class is lower, but we're retaining our kids. Our students are doing very well within our system. So I wish, what?
To flip the coin, you say we don't want to pick numbers like 8, 10 to cut them. How do you arrive at a number when you're going to add something back? I mean, if...
Well, to tell you the truth, I think it is about needs to some degree. I mean, if I had to add some things back that were all low numbers, I can tell you I would add the time back to my
No, I'm
staff.
saying, for instance, with land trans, you said we could, if the numbers...
Well, but that's, I mean, there are safety issues that are there for land trans. That's one of the reasons it was an easy decision for me to add a section
So
back.
how many more students? Is there a number? I'm not asking you to tell me. Is there a magic number where all of a sudden...
In my opinion, there is no magic number because so many different things play in it. For instance, if lands trans, we just say there's a magic number there that the instructor, based on the students that are in there and everything else, you can't go over 10. Then that becomes the magic number there. But then you're going to hear me say, well, how many sections can we afford? You're offering great lower classes. If we can afford them all, I think that is wonderful. But if you can't afford them all, then you say for that class the magic number is 10, but then maybe not everybody gets in there. You know, it depends on safety, it depends on 1,000 different things, it depends on the community itself and what they want to support. I wish I had a magic number because I can tell you this, if I had a magic number, it would make my life a lot easier. Instead, I'm looking at, yes, we've got to take a measure that we've got to get under control, in my opinion. And because of that, we have to look at all the factors. Do I want 25 to 30 kids in my 6th grade math? No. But I also don't want to cut $100,000 down the road. So where do we draw that line? If we can efficiently instruct our 6th graders with that many kids in there, then I think we effectively do that. If we can't, we have to revisit that. I wish I had enough. I wish I had that for you. I would sleep a lot better at night, to tell you the truth.
No, yeah, I wasn't...
Yeah, I know
Because
you
I'm
were.
trying to struggle with the, because you made the comment that we go ahead and vote on this, and then if the numbers change next year, we could always add it back at the beginning of the year. How would we know?
I guess you rely on Lori and I to look at it and say the numbers are such that we should add this back for the benefit of our students.
That's my question. Will you know what that number is?
We will continue to look at that. There will not be a magic bullet. That's when you talk about instructors and that kind of stuff. One of the things that convinced me my need to change my mind was in a great part the instructor. So then we get that input from the instructor. If there's not a solid reason for us to do it, whether the information comes from the instructor or anybody else, then you're going to hear us say, no, we don't believe this. If we believe we have a reason, we should be able to clarify that for the board and say this is the reason. The board may say not a good enough reason, but we will have a reason why we're doing it.
And Deb, as we go through the registration with the juniors and seniors and we start to see the sections fill up over 10, that's when I would bring it to Bob and say, you know, Bob, these sections are filling, we're getting into the higher numbers, and I still have, you know, my sophomores and freshmen to register. I think we need this class, or we need another section so we can spread these kids out. And
Because-
that would be
Yeah,
the,
because the number of sections does make a difference, because that helps a number of other kids take. It's just an ebb and flow, because as those numbers go up in another class, and then I guarantee there's another class that's going down. And then we have to look at that, but at that point, we will not be able to adjust that, because we will have set that. At that point, I can't go and say, oh, by the way, you know, these kids went over there, so now I get to cut this class. I will not have that option at that point.
Okay, well, I think there were, who made the motion and
Mark made a motion, or second.
who was seconded. Is there any further discussion?
One more thing, I'm gonna stick with exactly what I did, I'll do that second on this. I just hope we are really accurate in all of our numbers. Because we're cutting a very fractional portion of this budget. We all know that we need to cut it, but we gotta make sure everything else in this whole system is accurate.
To tell you the truth, Bruce, I'm hoping I'm way off and we have a lot more money to spend than what I think. I would be happy with that. I would be very happy to come back to the board and say, you know, dang, you know, the state's given us a ton more money than I thought. Part of the problem is I don't know how that state piece is gonna shake out yet. They're giving us 1.5 every year, that sounds wonderful, but I have seen too many times where they take from one hand and they put it in that hand and they say it is 1.5 that you're getting. The last time we made a run, and I had a business manager in a different district do it for me, who said he'd just do it. We went backwards $5,000 because they changed the ratios. They increased the ratio for all day kindergarten, paid for it. But then they adjusted the other ratios, which hurt us. My understanding, at least right now, is that some of those ratio changes are still in there. Which means that there's probably gonna be winners and there's probably gonna be losers throughout this. I don't know. I just,
Always. Take from your
I
right
don't know.
while they're taking it out of your
we
back pocket.
could be coming out a lot more, better than I thought. But until I can make runs and get exactly what the state is telling me, I'm stuck with what I have right now.
And don't we have to have a budget approved before they even give us any information anyhow, right?
Well, they're gonna make some runs. C is a great organization at that. They will make some runs. Right now, there's some property tax relief in the bills. That will help our community. Their taxes should go down based on that, but I'd like to see how much before I sit in this meeting to say, you know, people will see this go down, that'll put smiles on their face. But until we get this, let this shake out, and like I said, C on Thursday will be the first time I can talk with some people where I trust that are gonna tell me exactly how they foresee this shaking out, and C will run some runs also. I just don't know if they'll be ready on Thursday or not. And then a great resource for me again is the superintendents I will visit with on Friday.
If they don't have them ready that morning, they'll send them to your email address
Yeah.
by the end of the day, that's for sure.
Yeah, so, I mean, I need to let that shake out a little bit too, but like I said, if that's the case, I'll be more than happy to come to this board and say, you know, I was absolutely wrong. It'll be the happiest wrong that you'll ever hear me say. Right now, I'm under constraints, and this is what we're offering to the board, at least I'm offering to the board.
Question?
Yes. Yeah, all those in favor? Actually, this is a roll call.
This is a roll call.
Put it down, yep.
All right, Kella? Yes. Mark?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
Sharon? Yes.
Okay, motion carries. So I think we are on to number 6, under business, which is to review and consider approval authorizing Superintendent Hewitt to write a letter for the city of Paynesville supporting the writing of a grant to hire a police liaison officer for 4 years, with the understanding that the district and the city of Paynesville would share 25% of the cost of the officer for the first 3 years and share the full cost of the officer for the 4th year.
At this point, Mr. Chair, is that they need a letter supporting it, otherwise I don't think the grant would go through. on our run estimates on the cost, it would be, the grant would pay 75% of it. And then the Paynesville and the district in some way would have to decide how we shake out the other share. That'd be around anywhere $12 to $14, depends on, I suppose, the starting point of that. So you're really looking at $6,000 to $7,000 for the first 3 years. If we divide it
Every
equally
year.
right down the middle, every year. Because what you're doing is you're paying, oh, sorry. Next time, just throw something at me, Sean. You're paying for the officer every year. The grant would pay the 75%, we would need to get the other 25%. Certainly, as we talk about cuts, I mean, you guys know all the implications with that, right? And the toughest piece of this is that on the 4th year, and you have to have a 4th year if you get the grant, is that you need to pay for all of the officers' wages. After the 4th year, you can drop the piece, but you do have to get to the 4th year. If we write a letter of support, we may not get the grant. Okay, even if I write the letter of support, because those are competitive grants. They are, not everybody gets them. So there'd be a possibility, even if we wrote the letter, that we wouldn't get the grant. If we write the letter and we do get the grant, then there's a dilemma there, right? You've kind of said, we're looking at this way. Before you accept the grant, you can always turn it down, but of course, there's a PR piece that goes along with that. If you all of a sudden you say, we wanted this, and then you turn it down, but it would be an option of the board.
And this has to be written by tomorrow.
They had some trouble with their computer system. I may have a couple more days to write that note. And just to say that it would be needed before the next board meeting, what I believe would be absolutely accurate. The only thing I might have done is got a reprieve instead of spending some time tonight to write it, to take a couple days to write it. But I do believe, and I do have you get those form letters on what they're looking for, so I'm not sure it'll be a ton of work for me, but I just don't think we would have enough time to get to the next board meeting to revisit this.
The city already approved this.
The city has approved it at their meeting for the person to go ahead and start writing the grant. Would there certainly be a benefit to having a police liaison officer? Yes. The concern always becomes that money also, particularly when you get to the 4th year, has to come someplace. And if in the 4th year we're making other cuts of some type, then it becomes much more of a problem. I don't know where the city would be in that case. They might still do it. That's why we didn't put 50-50, we just said share of the cost. I think the city and the district would have to talk about that in one way or another.
In writing this letter, and even if we get the grant, we could still decide to opt out.
You could still decide to opt out. The only thing, like I mentioned, is that the piece just about, I mean, I'm sure there will be people out there that will believe that it's just the most outstanding thing, and then you're forced to make a cut of that or not do it. There's that piece that you would have to explain to the public why.
Well, you'd have to explain it anyhow if you didn't.
I think the safety of the children is something to engage the public in. And I know that one time we talked about having a public meeting, maybe nobody comes or not, but where the public engages us a little bit. We have talked in different meetings about these whiteboards, we've talked about what we do with the doors, buzzer systems, all of that. If you decide on this today, this is probably all the budget's gonna allow straight across the board.
Well, again, even if you decide to do this, it doesn't guarantee that you have to do it. If you don't do it, it guarantees you won't do it.
But there isn't enough time now to engage the public.
Yeah, this has come up pretty quick. I think the community just did it, was that last week? They just okayed it?
Yeah.
I went to the meeting, you think I'd remember the date?
Yep.
I thought it was last week that they just okayed themselves to go for the grant.
Without ever even discussing it with the school.
I was there at the meeting. Yeah, I said there's certainly an interest on our part,
That's
but I
okay.
can't speak for the board.
Well, it seems that we should write the letter with the
Oh, yeah.
understanding
I would
that,
think so,
you know, if it comes back, we can decide on it.
Absolutely.
Now, we still give
Well,
us
maybe,
some time
maybe,
to
and then
engage the public.
in the meantime, we can find out from the city, what is that
shared part.
I will send the board tomorrow, because I just got it today from my friend in another district who got the grant. They kind of had an MOU with the city and stuff. I'll send that to you, and you can take a look to see at least what that looked like when they got the grant. So I can share that with you, I just got it.
And that's
today.
fine, but at the rate, but what it boils down at the end of the day, what is the city going to be able to?
And I can't-
afford? And that's what we would need, because, I mean, yeah, it would be nice to have that secure person, in the buildings and stuff like that, but just like, look at the conversation we had just for $80,000, and then if we're looking at splitting the cost of third year, and that would have to be guaranteed, we're gonna spend that.
The moment you.
And you're gonna lose a teacher, I have a hard time with that, I'm sorry.
It would probably be 25 to 30, is what I'm guessing. And that'd be the fourth year.
Yep. Regardless, that is still something that's gonna be out there, that we know that year, we're gonna have to cut a teacher. And where are we gonna cut a teacher? And that's right from the kids.
I can certainly have, if you approve the writing letter, we can certainly start talking with the city about
But
what.
that's what we'd have to,
What the
otherwise I
fourth year
cannot
would
support
be.
anything like that.
And I can certainly bring that up tomorrow to
If
the
we write the
police
letter,
chief.
we have to renege. If we don't, or reject the
We have the option
decision.
of reneging.
Right,
Well, if you
then
don't-
public land, like you said.
If you don't accept the grant, if you just say we're not gonna do that, then it'd certainly be nice to know what the city's position on it would be.
But no matter what, the deadline date is really quick.
I was told, yes, that I need to write a letter. Originally it was by tomorrow. And now, because of some computer things, I have, looks like a few days. I'm not even sure if it'll give me the weekend, but, yeah.
I think the motion to say yes, we'll write the letter, but we will
And-
strongly consider this when it comes back.
And I will talk with the police chief, and I will mention that we're concerned particularly about that fourth year. And certainly from our perspective, it would be nice if we knew and had some discussion with the city about what if we cannot afford that, what would happen to that? And I can certainly bring that information back to the board. I just don't know right now.
I'll make a motion that we at least write the letter. Give you permission to go ahead and write the letter.
Okay, motion by Lou,
I'll second that.
second by Cheryl. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, on to personnel. Review and consider approval of hiring Cole Humbert for the 13-14 school year as the head volleyball coach.
I will tell you at least what's coming back from me from the hiring committee was that they only had 2 candidates, I believe, but they were both very good. And it was a tough decision, and it really came down to very small details on who they thought would be the best. This is their best shot at it, but they're both highly qualified candidates. There was just a little bit of expertise here and there that split them a little bit apart, but it was a tough decision.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Burke. Second by Kellogg. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 2, review and consider approval of termination of Valerie Miller, paraprofessional, at the end of the 12-13 school year due to financial restrictions and enrollment.
It's just what it is.
And this conversation.
Yep.
So moved.
Motion by Lou,
Second.
and Deb. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 3, review and consider a resolution proposing placing Diane Fortney on unrequested leave of absence by .242 full-time equivalent due to lack of pupils and financial limitations.
If the board approves this one, they will get a letter tomorrow that mentions when the date is. I think it would be just before if they want a hearing, the date, it would be just before the next board meeting. I think I set it up for 6 o'clock. So that's when they would do it. They have 15 days to ask me if they want a hearing. Otherwise, this is
Any motion by Mark?
Need a roll call.
Okay. We have a motion by Mark,
Second.
second by Deb. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll have Linda call the roll.
Cheryl? Aye. Bruce?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Deb?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Callan? Aye.
Motion carries. Number 4, review and consider a resolution proposing to place Mike Gunther on request leave of absence by .087 FTE due to lack of pupils and financial limitations.
So moved.
Motion by Mark,
I'll second it.
second by Deb. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
It's roll
Oh, I'm sorry, this is a roll call vote again.
Bruce?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Deb?
call. Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Callan? Aye. Cheryl? Aye.
Your motion carries. Okay, we're on to informational reports. Bruce, could you add?
Well, we had a meeting, I guess, about a week ago or so. I was a little bit late, but I think it got the gist of most everything. That very active, they have an active summer started. They're looking for any ideas to move forward. That comes up every time we have a meeting. They're always asking for any ideas. So no matter who we run into, if they've got ideas of programs they're interested. There was a discussion a little bit about the water platform that they're working with the city on. That's gonna go in the park. It's kind of a sprinkler system the kids just run through. So it's not a pool, but they go in and a signal flips on when somebody's in there. It's timed so it doesn't go out in the middle of the night when people are rolling around. And the little kids can run through in there and get sprinkled.
I can't remember if they had a mushroom in there or not. So
Yeah,
they want
really
underneath
cool.
and it drips down and then.
In the gazebo park.
Cool.
Yeah, the feeling, Matt said that, there was, it's one of those hidden things that we have in the community that maybe could be more utilized, and this could make that work.
Yep.
It was really a great idea. And then, I'm lost a little bit, but I think that, everybody got the new program of all the offering, that's out. So that's out and going. Biggest thing I can carry away from it is, they're looking for ideas. If you know of something out there, there was a little discussion on, after-school daycare. Which I understand they had at one time, maybe dropped the program. Matt expressed opinions on how do you really make sure that works? How do you know that you have the kids? All of that. But obviously, something's come up a little bit to him, and so they're very, very good meetings. I think he does a great job.
Yeah. Thanks, Bruce. Deb, staff development.
May 9th. Moving through the logs, Mr. Hewitt gave the just update on how the 2% is no longer set aside. And, oh no, it
But it
is
is
set
set
aside.
aside,
It's
yep.
just not they go back and forth with it. We still have it now, but then the way to distribute it is no longer there anymore.
There's no requirements on the part of, other than having a committee, an advisory committee to.
No, I used to have to follow the staff or to license teachers to the building and everything. It was all attached to numbers and stuff. And now it's not, it's just 2% set aside. Discussed some of that, talked about review of the calendar. Got the feedback from the March 28th eye observation workshop. Biggest part of the discussion, I think, was on the Leah banquet for the distinguished service in support of education and how we go about choosing criteria for that. New business, talked about iPad training sessions. The June in-service days, again, the proposed budget from him, and filling vacancies on the committee. That's always fun. Some of them are retirees, so they have to fill them. I think that's always been the joke. That was how you get off the staff development committee, you have to retire. Had a little going away party for Amy Flanders. That was her last official. She was been there for, she was the one telling the best jokes about how they conned the new teachers into, an older teacher would bring one of the newer ones in and say, oh, just come and see how it is. Because if they get you in the door, you're there till you retire. But it was, and then they, I think that's pretty much the majority of it. Next meeting was, we had to have it because there were some of the things had to be decided on before, because our April meeting got canceled because of sunshine. And they discussed what to do on those extra school days, those snow days that we're going to be having so much fun with. I don't think you were there, did I? Got my notes, but I think that's about it.
The staff, the budget for the district-wide had been used all up, and I think there was a little bit left in the site budgets. But the state also doesn't want those to carry over from now on. They really want that just to be moved out of the staff development. And
That was a little bit of discussion as usual, because that's always been a source topic about making sure that the money follows, but the state's not supporting that anymore, so.
Okay, Kella, continuing then.
We met a week ago today. It's a working meeting, so we're cutting and stapling continuing education sheets. And I believe the report was, everybody turned theirs in that were due, except for a couple.
There were a couple that still need to get some things in.
Otherwise, our next meeting is October.
And they're changing the form that they're using to work with staff.
Okay, thank you. And Bruce, facility equipment.
Well, I have to say, that has been very interesting, similar to some of the discussions we have had today. Just briefly, for all those that didn't see it, we were presented lists of all the items that needed to be done. We were to narrow them down. We had to work it through the budgets. As Bob said, we have a plan of not retaining as much reserve to try and get projects done that we need to. There are things like the parking lots that need to be sealed that you cannot keep on going on and let those go. And there were lots of things that were like that. There, in that budget, just for your information, is very specific items that we cannot change. We are paying a lease payments on 2 roofs. We're paying lease payments on technology, and that amounts to roughly about $180,000. And so what we're trying to do is condense, I'm gonna throw that number out, about $400,000 into about $100,000 worth of expenses and trying to make that go. So my interpretation is we narrowed it down as a group to the things that we felt we could not survive any longer on without incurring a tremendously large expense going forward. A lot of tension, just like all of us, a lot of emotional things going on. But we had really good meetings. I think we have a very productive group, and everybody's got an opinion. So there's nobody quiet in there, which I think is excellent.
Okay.
Lou, you're also there, any additions?
We're right now. I'm looking on the tractor.
Do you have anything you want to add? Also
No, that pretty much covered it.
Okay.
Okay, Bob, administration.
Yeah, we have made an offer to some of our groups, our principals and community ed director, AD, who we're missing. buildings and grounds, and then also our technology person. I'm just waiting for response back from them, so that's kind of where we're at with the negotiations with them. Once we kind of get input from them, then I will bring that information to the board, and I will explain everything and what was offered, what was accepted, and then it'll be certainly be up to the board on whether they wish to approve it. All right, so I'm hoping that we're not too far down the road, and that is for this year. Like I said, I had mentioned, I think to most board is that I'm looking to have a 1-year agreement here and then putting everybody on the same rotation. So we then would start renegotiating again along with all the other groups. Right?
Okay, and continuing with your
Yeah, this will be fast. Negotiations I just mentioned, capital budget has been just an adventure. There just isn't enough dollars to get everything done. Like Bruce had mentioned, we have such a big amount that we have to specifically spend that we have no option on, that it doesn't leave a whole lot of other dollars to get some of these other projects done that are also important, in that if you don't eventually get to them, it could cost you much more dollars, whether it be parking lots or roofs, that type of stuff. So that really was the dilemma. And I hope to bring that budget to the board at the next meeting, so that we'll put it all up there, we'll talk about it, we'll discuss a little bit about why we came up with the things that we came up with. Calendar, I hope to bring also to the board next meeting. I'm kind of already past the deadline I should have hit, but there's been a lot of discussion, and I've just always found so interesting that calendars are really emotionally packed things for individuals, but I do hope to bring the calendar to the board for next year, and then to have discussion, even start working on a tentative calendar for the year after that. And then the rest is just trying to figure out right now what the state funding will mean and what the budget will be for next year. So that's where I'm at, kind of what my time is being spent right now.
Okay. Is there anything else on the board? I just have a question, one question. Are we planning on having transportation negotiation meetings soon?
Yeah, we will have said, I guess I haven't really talked to you, talking about bus company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would think that yes, because there are some changes there that I need to do. I guess Phyllis and I just haven't been in contact with each other. Some of the unions have said we need to get started now, start to set up those meetings for that. And we'll probably discuss more than in one group at a time. We'll probably go from one to the next and have some discussions and start opening that. But yeah, transportation is also one of those that we need to look at.
And I just want to bring up, and I just was thinking about it, I was sitting there, maybe, I don't know, I talked to Bob this afternoon a little bit when I was in there for the bills and stuff like that, and I think what I would like to do is maybe every other month, maybe just kind of give you snippets of some of the things that I see, when I go through my audits and stuff like that. I was talking to Joan a little bit too, and just like for an example, one of the things that I think intrigues me is, because there is so much emphasis on what are we doing to the buildings, how much is it costing us, Sure, we see our big budget, but we really don't see what it actually is that we're actually paying for. And so for an example, just for the maintenance and the repair of some of the equipment, year to date, we're at $33,000 that we've paid out of our general funds or health and safeties, which is substantial. I mean, if you really look at it. The other thing is just for capital improvements to the buildings, just to the buildings. That's not any other equipments or anything else. That's just for the buildings itself. We're almost at $30,000. So, we are doing some things with it, and the public needs to be aware of what are we actually doing. We are doing something.
Our buildings aren't getting any younger.
No. And so between the two of them, that's $50,000 that we're trying to do to make the buildings better than what they are. So, so we are doing a lot of good things, or trying to do with the money that we're having. So it's not like we're not spending money on the buildings too. So, but anyhow, so that's, I think, I'm gonna probably every other month, maybe I'll just have a little snippet from my perspective of what's going on with some of the bills and stuff, so you guys can kind of see. And even year to date, we have $5,200 more snow removal than we did the year before.
Really?
We all knew that, but it amounts to 52. Well, now $5,200.
I really didn't notice.
But you look at $5,200 $200. We were just debating about a $6,000, you know, look what we could have done with that. But we have to do that too. So that's where our monies go to.
Gas too.
Well, those are some of the inherent things that we, you know, like utilities, and I'm not gonna really go into much with utilities and stuff, because you can see that on our reports and stuff. These are just kind of more of a, oh wow, what are we actually doing and stuff like that, so.
Okay. All right,